Did you know that a significant portion of Americans have no retirement savings plan? Hello, action taker. Welcome to Live Blissed Out, a podcast where I have inspirational and informational conversations with business owners and subject matter experts to help you get the scoop on a variety of topics. Tired of hesitating or making decisions without having the big picture? Want to be in the know? Then this is the place to go. I'm your host, Marissa Houston, helping you achieve bliss through awareness and action. So let's get to it. Allie Beckmann is the founder of Beckmann Financial, where mission-driven individuals and business owners are empowered to use money as a tool to turn their dreams into reality, one that reflects their values and vision for impact. As a comprehensive flat-fee financial planner, wealth manager, and behavioral coach, Allie partners with visionaries, creatives, and service-based entrepreneurs to bring order to their finances and guide them on an efficient path to financial security and wealth building. Her approach is uniquely holistic and deeply human, blending strategic expertise with emotional intelligence to create lasting impact. To learn more, visit beckmannfinancial.com. Download the free Meaningful Money Workbook at beckmannfinancial.com/values download. All content is for information purposes only. It is not intended to provide any tax or legal advice or provide the basis for any financial decisions, nor is it intended to be a projection of current or future performance or indication of future results. Advisory services are offered by Beckmann Financial, an investment advisor in the state of Colorado and other jurisdictions in which it may conduct business. Allie, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
There is a lot of opportunity to inform people and make them aware about money, their finances, how they view that in their lives, and what they can do to broaden their horizons and maybe change their perception of it. So thank you for being here, and I'm excited to hear what you have to share with our listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much. As you said, I think this is a really important topic to talk about, particularly because there's a really strong societal messaging that you shouldn't talk about money. And at the end of the day, that's not always helpful advice. Of course, you want to be tactful and read the situation appropriately, but I think that messaging has gone unchecked for a really long time. And then it kind of gives this overarching message that money is this thing that is separate from us. It's bigger than us. It's kind of scary. We shouldn't be talking about it. But then that makes it unsafe to ask questions. And at the end of the day, that's where I was for a really long time. I didn't even feel like I could ask questions. I opted out because it just didn't feel like money, wealth, investing was for me. And I didn't have the education, the support, the confidence to even ask to learn more. And if I can help anybody get a little bit more comfortable just stepping toward money, seeking education, asking questions to a trusted advisor, partner, friend, then that's a step in the right direction.
You said the key word. It really is trust, because there's a lot that goes along with it, as you know, Allie, and there's a lot of emotional sides to it. There's also this, can I trust this individual? And that trust part is so important because whoever you do end up partnering with is somebody that you absolutely have to be comfortable talking to and sharing some very sensitive information. And so you have to know without a doubt that that person is meeting that criteria. And then on top of that, determining who you're talking to is important too, because sometimes you don't want to talk to a friend about these things in the sense that you worry about judgment, or you feel like maybe you failed in some way, or maybe you succeeded too much and somebody else might not like that. Whatever the factors are, it's such a sensitive topic. It's just one of those things that we grow up always being told, just don't go there. There's a lot of things you're not supposed to talk about, and that's one of them. I think it's important for us to be able to share with our listeners, what are some of the things perhaps they should be thinking about or taking a step forward with so that they can then start to progress in this journey? Because if they just procrastinate, put it off, and never address it, obviously the things that they have to deal with will never go away.
Yeah, they just get worse, really, the more we avoid it. And I love what you said about trust, especially when it comes to not just who you might be talking with in your community, your inner circle, but especially when it comes to an advisor or someone professionally that you're working with. I think the first step, and as it relates to trust, is yourself. I think because there's such a societal message that we shouldn't talk about it, it prevents us from learning how to have a healthy relationship with money, even just one-on-one, ourselves and our money. And so I think it has to start with your own inner reflective work, getting brave enough to look at your own relationship with money. Because the more you can take those steps on your own, that's going to inform who you choose to ultimately work with or share with in your circle or as a professional. So I think the first step comes down to asking yourself some questions or doing some journaling, some reflecting on where's your current relationship with money. One of the questions I love to ask my clients when I'm onboarding them and they're just beginning to work with me is I have a series of questions that I ask them to understand their emotional relationship with money, because we all have one and we don't always take the time to kind of parse that out. And so one of the questions that I ask is, if you were to personify money, how would you describe your current relationship with it? If you were in a relationship with it and it was more of a person, what would that relationship be? Is it a toxic relationship? Are you abusing money? Do you feel like money is abusing you in some way? Is it the long distance relationship that you never talk to and maybe you just prefer it to be out of your face, but then you're not really connected. You don't know what it's doing. You feel kind of scared to ask and find out. So it's easier just not to ask. Maybe you have a really positive relationship with it and you're flowing with it, or maybe it's all the way on the other side of the spectrum. You're micromanaging it. You're checking in on it all the time. You always need to know what it's doing, So any range of options on that spectrum, I think it's a fun way to start to look honestly at what is your current relationship to money. Then thinking about, well, okay, here's where we are currently. What is ideal? What does an ideal relationship look like? What is that balance of connectivity, communication? How is it serving you? How are you supporting it? So I think that's a really great place for people to just start to get a handle on, where am I at when it comes to how I'm relating to thinking about money?
That is such a great way to look at it. I think that's the problem, is a lot of times we think that it's a lot more complicated than it needs to be, but everything really starts with one step, one question, one act, and something even very, very basic. So I find that, for example, people have a relationship with money in the sense that they feel like they can never have enough. And the reason they may never have enough is because every time they have more, they just spend more. And they keep thinking, if I spend more, I'm going to be happier. And that doesn't happen. And then they just have less. And then they keep feeling like, I keep putting so much extra work. I have to do so much just to get by, when the reality is maybe they don't need that much, or maybe they just need to manage it better. And it starts with that first step, which is asking the question. Because when is it ever the right time? Some people always say, I can't get this because it's not the right time. Well, when will it be? It probably never will if you don't make a plan.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I think that that's super important, because I find so many people, this is just me, but I see a lot of people trying to keep up with the Joneses. It's like, well, somebody got a new car. I need to get a new car too. And is that really going to make you happy? Is that something that you really need? And if the answer is yes, and you're willing to put in the effort to get more money so that you can get that thing, then great, that's what you want. But I think a lot of people are finding very quickly that what they thought would bring them peace and happiness or just satisfaction, it's not what they thought it was. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I'm really glad you brought that up, because it really speaks to the core of how I go about financial planning in my practice. Before I get to that, I also want to mention that what I'm hearing from you, I totally agree with you. This kind of, we think that if we spend this much more, or if we earn this much more, then fill in the blank. I'll be happy. I'll be satisfied. I'll have enough, whatever. But in that way of thinking, we're really outsourcing all of our power to money. We give money so much power over us. I mean, even the people who say, and I feel like I was in this camp for a while, like we just feel like money is evil because we've probably never had a good relationship with it, or we see people abusing it who are not doing good in the world. And it can create a lot of resentment. And it seems like money is at the root of this, right? I mean, there is a quote, money is the root of all evil. And I really resist that way of thinking because at the end of the day, money is a tool. It is a neutral currency, right? It is energy, but it doesn't have a good or a bad. Humans do that. Humans ascribe a judgment to all sorts of things, money included. And so what I try and do with my clients and my community is take back the power into your own hands. You determine what success looks like. You determine the barometer of meaningful success and sufficiency. And then we use money as a tool to accomplish that. And so back to what I was saying about the way that I've decided to kind of focus my approach to financial planning is, to your point, is it just about a number? Because oftentimes once people reach that number, they feel so empty. So I believe that financial planning really is life planning, and it has to link back to your values. So one of the first exercises I'll do with my clients is a values exercise, which I'm going to share with the listeners at the end of this podcast, but it's an exercise to clarify your top 5 personal values. And then from there, we go into a pretty deep conversation around what those values mean, what they actually look like in action. And we start to think about, does money impact that value? Does money relate to it at all? And maybe it doesn't, but maybe it does. And so then at the core of our financial planning, we're always thinking about what are those values and how can we use money as a tool to help you live in greater alignment with your values. Because living in alignment with your values, your priorities, your personal beliefs, that is the stuff that gives that deep sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. And there is no number that necessarily matches that. A quick anecdote, I was doing some of my own, and a total admission, I can often get stuck on a number to measure my success. I still have to be really active in that practice because it's really hard not to just pay attention to the bottom line number. I was doing some of my own business planning at the end of last year and was going through an exercise on what does success mean to me? What does it look like to me? And kind of pulling it apart. And once I distilled down what success means and looks like to me, and then I reflected on where I'm currently at in my life, Marissa, I realized I'm already there. And so I'm like, wow, when I just look at the number, I don't feel like I'm quote unquote there. But when I actually look at what really matters to me and I boil it down to those essentials, I have all those things in my life. Sure, could it be bigger? Could it be more? Like, yes, we can always dream bigger and dream more. And I'm a dreamer to the max, right? I can blow my dreams out exponentially. But when we really take a minute to get to the heart of what matters to us, sometimes we're so much closer to our version of success than we realize. And again, that starts to take back the power from this thing called money that often makes us feel powerless. And so that's why values, I think, are just so important and critical when it comes to financial planning.
That's the thing is, I think based on what you were saying, it really boils down to what fulfills you. And what does one person does not necessarily the other. And a lot of times we judge each other and then we worry about what other people think. I think it's important, and I like to do this on the podcast, is share a very real hypothetical example of what we're talking about here so that our listeners really get the message, what we're trying to say. We're just going to talk about something hypothetical. So let's pretend that you have a family that really values family time and simplicity. And so for them, the idea of fulfillment would be watching a movie together and playing board games and maybe the adults having a glass of wine or just something very, very simple and fulfilling because to them, the value of everything is being together. And then you have this other family that really values more elaborate celebrations. Let's just say that. So they'll have 50 friends over and they'll cater in and they want to get everybody dressed up and they want to do all these different events and they want to show everybody their beautiful home and they want to do everything to the max. And if they don't, they feel like there's something inadequate in their lives. They just don't feel fulfilled. They love doing that, inviting other people into their world and giving them that elevated experience. Whereas the other family that we just talked about doesn't care about that. They just love that cozy, very comfortable, very simple way of spending time together. Now, is one better than the other? Absolutely not, but it's a different way of valuing things. Here's where the financials come in, right? One is going to cost way more than the other. And does that make that one more important or more valued? Maybe to them it is. And again, it just depends on the individual and how they view things. Does that kind of express what we were just sharing a moment ago?
Yeah, I think so. And it's a great example because, again, it relieves the pressure of comparison syndrome. What the internet is these days and with social media, we are seeing the best of the best highlight reels of everyone's life all the time. And so I say that just to remind people that like that is automatically instigating a comparative kind of reaction. And so when we can anchor our own self and our own perspective in what matters to us, then it just cuts through the noise so much easier around like you can see those other people going all out, living it up, and you can recognize that and not feel that pang in your body of should I be doing that or I'm not doing that, so I'm not enough. What's wrong with me? It's no, that's them living their life. And I know what matters to me. And so I can focus on that without going down a rabbit hole or a shame spiral when we start comparing ourselves to other people who live just a completely different life and, yeah, potentially value something different.
Yes. And it goes back to understanding yourself, reflecting on yourself and figuring out what is fulfilling for you and not doing it because everybody else is doing it, but doing it because it aligns with your values. And everything we're talking about then is related to financial means. If you don't have a certain amount of money to have this elaborate party, then yeah, you have less freedom in the sense that you can't choose to have it even if you wanted to because you just don't have the funds for it. But at the same time, there are people who can and choose not to on the opposite spectrum because they value the simplicity. It's not a judgment thing. And I see so many absolutely fulfilled and happy people who don't go all out, who just do simple things and just love life. And at the same time, it's okay to want to do those things as well because you might make somebody's day. You might be able to share some of that success that you have on a financial level with other people that may not have the choice to do it. It's not a right or wrong, but I think it's important for us to reflect and really understand ourselves and where we want to be in order to get where we want to go.
Yes, well said. I think, too, the other side of this conversation is always remembering that our life experience is fluid. Both of those hypothetical families you described probably value quality time with friends and family, but they're expressing it differently. Family one who's choosing like the simplicity, they might want to have a more lavish party and provide for their friends and go all out, but they also might realize, hey, we're just not able to do that yet. And so this is where the other side of the conversation with goals come in. It balances out the scales with values because you might value this and then you lay it against your goals. And based on where you're at financially and in your financial plan, what are you working toward? You might realize, hey, on the list of priorities, throwing a huge party for our friends, it doesn't matter as much as maxing out our retirement plans at work. So we care a little bit more about our financial security in the future and our kids' security. So we're going to prioritize maybe, let's say, saving a little bit more in our 401ks, but we still have that goal of being able to provide more of a lavish party for our friends one day. And so allowing room for your goals to be fluid. And I think, again, why values are so helpful is that it can help you boil down the essence of what matters to you. And so quality time with the fam, watching a movie, having a glass of wine at home, maybe that's the current expression of what that value looks like. That can change over time, but it allows you to get creative around how you're satisfying those values when you compare it against your financial means and your financial goals. We're trying to find that harmony of like, here's what I value, here are my goals, and then here's where I'm at currently. How do they best harmonize together in this current moment? In order to be able to do that, we've got to step forward and have a relationship and an awareness with our money first, so that then we can start to make those clearer and more informed choices. And then as time goes on, reevaluate in 6 months, reevaluate in a year. Can we shift the budget? Do we have a little bit extra to put towards a party? What could we do with a little bit of extra cash? And so I feel like sometimes people get down and out if they can't express the fullest version of their dreams today. But just remember, like, where you're at today doesn't determine where you're going to be tomorrow. So just letting that experience be fluid and taking it one step at a time. I really emphasize progress in my meetings. It's not about perfection. It's not about getting everything done in a day. It's about just continuing to take one step forward toward progress at a time.
It's funny because I watch a lot of these ads that come on TV and they're always telling you, have you checked all of your subscriptions lately and how many you possibly are paying for that you don't even know you have or you haven't used in a really long time? That's kind of the awareness piece of it, right? I mean, you could wake up one day and realize you're spending an extra $200 a month on something you don't even use. And it's like, wow, that could go towards a party if that's really important to me. And the other piece of it too is just going back to what you said, it's freedom. It's being able to make the choices that are fulfilling for you and not being held back by the financial piece of it. And so setting goals, it's like anything in life. If you have a goal to get a specific job or to maybe take that trip or to do certain things in your life, you don't just wake up and do it. You have to have a plan. And so taking that step back and being aware of where you're at and then trying to figure out, how do I get there? What are my priorities? That's where it all starts, right?
Yes. And I'll just say back to something you said in the beginning of the conversation, I want to call out a common misconception that I run into a lot when I'm talking to people. People feel like they have to have everything figured out before they approach a financial advisor. And that is why we're here. It's to help you figure it out. I do things a little bit differently in terms of client onboarding and client experience than some advisors. And I call back on other careers and a lot of experience in facilitation. But that's my job, is to help you figure these things out. You don't have to have it all figured out before you start working with a planner. To be honest, I think that's just another excuse that people say to keep kicking the can down the road. And again, like you said in the beginning, then you just you're waiting for some day where everything is organized and in line before you get started. But let's be real, that day is probably never going to come. Things are changing all the time. We're never going to arrive at that perfect point. And if we do, it will be fleeting. That's just how balance works. It is not a consistent state. It is a moment of balance. And so you don't need to have everything figured out to have a conversation with a planner or an advisor. And if you're not ready, ideally that advisor would tell you and help you prioritize, here's what you can do to get yourself in a position where it does make sense for us to start working together. So take the brave step and just reach out, have a first conversation. That in itself can give you a lot of information in terms of, do I feel ready for this? Is that person a good fit? And from there, but it's about making progress one step at a time, breaking it down into actionable steps.
And I find that that's the secret sauce to pretty much everything. I think what happens is we overanalyze things to the point where we discourage ourselves because we think of it as such a monumental task. When in reality, every monumental task is broken up into little steps. It's really funny because when you do see movement, it's like you don't want to stop. You just keep going even faster. You just got to take that first step. And that's the hardest part. I want to go back to what you just said. I think we have a preconceived notion about what a financial planner is. And many people will say, well, I just don't have enough money, so I'm not even going to bother talking to one. I'm not there. I'll wait 10 years from now or whatever. And again, to your point, that's exactly why you're there, because you want to help them now and 10 years from now. You don't want them to sit back and wait until they have enough. You want to help them get there. And so that's a big mindset shift that people need to have. What can a financial planner do to help me get to where I want to go? It's totally different, right?
Totally different. And I want to say, not all financial advisors are the same, right? And so understand the landscape you're walking into. And this is where, again, doing a little bit of pre-work can come in handy, understanding like, what are your biggest needs? What are your biggest gaps in your financial life? What are your financial goals? What would be the most helpful to you? Having that kind of clarity of objective before you seek out an advisor will allow you to then cater your search for an advisor to someone who's going to better align with your needs and your objectives. There are plenty of advisors who have asset minimums, meaning that you have to have a certain level of money in investments that they can then manage in order for them to work with you, because that's how they get paid. That's totally fine. They're allowed to do that. But I just say that because without understanding the landscape, you might walk into a situation and they might turn you away because you, quote unquote, don't have enough money. And money's already so emotional and sensitive that then, if that were me, I would feel really shut down and then probably avoid money for another 10 years, And so just understanding that, like, just because one advisor gave you a bad experience, don't let that deter you from seeking out someone who could be a great fit for you. There's so many different kinds of advisors out there. Understanding like how they get paid, what they focus on, what their process is. This allows you then to go into that conversation. You're interviewing them just as much as they're assessing you if you're a good fit. Understanding what you're looking for really informed the way that I set up my practice, because I was that person who, quote unquote, didn't have any money for most of my life and felt like that just kind of excluded me from getting any kind of financial advice. And so once I got into the financial industry, which, this is my third career, so I've done other things besides this. Once I finally understood how advisors actually get paid and what that looks like, it really informed the way that I wanted to create my practice, just to create different levels of entry based on where people are at. So for me, I do a lot of flat fee financial planning, which for a lot of people, they don't know what that is or that exists. Flat fee financial planning allows you to pay an advisor just out of your pocket, basically, for financial planning. You don't necessarily have to have $1 million minimum in assets. It all depends. Every advisor sets up their practice differently, but flat fee advising removes that barrier if you are just getting started with building wealth, but you have a decent income and things are trending in the right direction. This is a stepping stone to start working with a planner to help you start building those assets and building your wealth. So again, just kind of understanding the landscape, I think, can give you a few more resources when you do a search for an advisor and when you go into that conversation, so that you're not at risk of internalizing a potential rejection or a not a great fit, just simply because that's how they practice. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't work out on the first try.
You already shared something I didn't know. For me, for example, I meet a lot of great people, and they may conflict in the sense that several of them may be in the same space. But I'm not the person to judge who is the right fit for another person. And so what I typically do is when I'm talking to somebody and they happen to mention they need help in something, and I happen to know 3 people in that space, I give them all 3 names because I know each one specializes in something different, and they may not get along with 2 of them, but really hit it off with the other one. And who am I to say which is the right fit for them, right? So that's where it's really, really important to understand that everybody specializes in something different. And what may be a good fit for one is not necessarily for the other. I love to connect people and I give them those options and I'll say, meet with them because they each have different personalities, areas of expertise, passions, and vice versa. To your point, it's not just them wanting to hire you, but vice versa, right? It's a reciprocal relationship. I don't know all the areas of expertise that you know. Connecting you with somebody who needs your services ultimately, and then letting them decide and having that conversation with them to figure out if it's the right fit for both of you, that's on your end, not on mine. And so just because something didn't work out with one person doesn't mean there isn't somebody else out there who can help you.
Yes. And again, it just brings the power back into your own body and mind, right? You're not giving up all your power, hoping that this person is going to take you on as a client. No, it keeps the power within yourself. You're making a choice, going into it with that mindset. This might not be a good fit, and that's okay. Because at the end of the day, I find if you do have a conversation with someone, I mean, whether it's a financial advisor or anyone else you're looking to work with, if it's not a great conversation and it's not a good fit, that is such good information to help you clarify what you are and are not looking for. Again, just do your best to not get discouraged if you don't have a positive experience on a first go, because that's just really good information that's helping you refine your search even better.
Exactly. And we should do that anyway. You don't just grab somebody and say, hey, do this. And you don't even understand like what they offer, how things work. I mean, you have to do research no matter what. I think that's so critical. Now, Allie, you did mention in the beginning of the podcast that there was some activity or something you wanted to share with the listeners. What exactly was that?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to share 2 things. The first thing is an activity that anyone can do. Like you said, what's one step we can take? Here's another fun question I'll pose to the listeners. If you died tomorrow and someone looked through your spending statements, would they know what mattered to you? That question can often make people give various reactions. But I think spending is such a powerful and often overlooked place where we can start to make a difference today. I like to call this the alignment audit. What you can do is I say pull up your last 2 to 3 months of transaction statements, bank, credit card, skim through them. Don't overthink it. Just observe where your money has been going. You might highlight or categorize kind of what your biggest spending areas are. And I want you to ask yourself a few questions. What spending choices feel really good and aligned with the life I want? Where am I spending that doesn't actually bring me joy or value? And is my money supporting the things that matter most to me? And then pick one way to shift money toward something that feels meaningful, whether it's cutting an expense or redirecting money toward a goal or an investment or intentionally spending on something or at a business or toward a cause that you care about. Pick one way, just one way you can shift how you're spending your dollars towards something that feels more meaningful. So this is an activity, like I said, anyone can do it. Everyone, no matter how much money you have, we all spend money. And it is such a powerful way to start to reclaim that sense of empowerment and choice in how we're using our money, and then in turn, how our money is serving us. The part 2 to the offer is if you're listening to this conversation and you're like, I don't even really know what my values are. Like I haven't thought about it or I haven't visited them in a while, I'm offering to the listeners a free values meaningful money workbook that I've created that people can download. It's the exercise that I offer to my new clients when we start to work together. So you're getting a snippet into my process that I do with my clients where it'll take you through an exercise to clarify your top 5 values and then figure out, is your money supporting the things that matter to you and take you through those reflection questions to just support that awareness and sense of alignment. So I'm sure we'll link to it in the show notes. You can go to the special URL is my website, beckmanfinancial.com/values download.
Fantastic. And I will definitely add it to the show notes so it's easily accessible and downloadable when they pull up the podcast. I mean, that's really what it's about. It's utilizing tools, connecting with somebody that is in alignment with your values, having the conversations, taking the first step. If we were to summarize basically the key notes of this podcast, that's really what it boils down to. And you just have to get going and realize that there are a lot of options, lots to consider, and it's just a place to start.
Yes. That's my favorite thing is to get people excited about financial planning because like you said, once you start to see that positive movement build upon itself where your money does start to work for you and you can build more trust with it and it's helping you live in greater alignment with your values and give you more peace of mind and confidence as you move through this world, that is a positive cycle that keeps perpetuating itself. My main message is that put yourself at the center of your financial plan. Don't sacrifice your values and what matters to you. And that is how you'll stay in a seat of empowerment and make sure that your money is there to support you and what matters most.
Allie, thank you. I really value your time and your willingness to share your knowledge to help us.
Thank you so much, Marissa. What a joyful and buoyant conversation. I'm so grateful to have been a guest on this amazing podcast and so grateful for people like you putting these kinds of messages and resources out into the world to help people take steps toward a more meaningful and joyful life.
Thank you, Allie. That's a wrap for this episode of Live Blissed Out. Thanks to Allie Beckmann for joining us, and thanks for listening. If you have a question or comment for a future episode, all you have to do is go to speakpipe.com/LBOVM or click the link in the show notes to leave a brief audio message. If you find value in our show, please visit liveblисsedout.com to reach out, subscribe, and share on social media. This show is made possible through listeners like you. Thank you. So long for now, and remember to keep moving forward.